Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending this other talk for tonight. I'm greatly honored to be speaking here tonight, and my name is Mwangi wa Mutuanene, as Philip has said, but my Aussie friends call me Mutu. So tonight you can call me Mutu. It's much shorter and simpler. At the outset, allow me also to thank the manager of Canterbury City Library for according me this opportunity. And may I also wish to thank Philip again, whom we've been corresponding over the last few weeks, and has made these special arrangements to facilitate this meeting. Thank you, Philip. Last year, I authored a book entitled The Weatherproof Salesman. In the copy, you've already seen that with Philip. How many of you have read the book? Has anybody read the book? No? Never heard of it? Oh, Jeremy has read the book. Philip has read the book. Thank you. There is a copy in the library for those that would love to read the copy. I also did bring a few copies, and which I'll be selling at a discounted price of $20 at the end of the talk. If any of you wishes to get a copy, I encourage you to get a copy. Now, the good thing with the other talks is that the author can get in there and select a topic and choose what to say about the topic. Now, this evening, I've chosen to discuss two particular issues that relate to the book. And the first one is the broader message in the book. That is asking what message does the Weatherproof Salesman hope to convey to its readers? And my aim, though, is not to waste a lot of your time, getting into too much detail of the book, because that would steal the excitement when you have to read the book yourself. But rather, I want to concentrate on the things that I did not write. As it is, there are always some things in the book and some that you wished to write and some you didn't write. The second thing I would like to discuss, time allowing, is what factors prompted me to write the book, and in particular, what aspects of my socio, cultural, and professional experiences does the book draw from. You all know the cliche that says, never judge a book by its cover, right? Yeah. And on your table, I put the cover of the book, so it looks like this, and you might want to have a look at it. It looks like that. I might ask you to have a quick look at it and see what you think about that. And because, as you know, oftentimes one could be prejudiced by the looks and the first impression, and thereby make erroneous assumptions leading to the wrong conclusion. And of course, none of us want to be caught out on the wrong side of ignorance as a result of faulty presumptions. Now, including politicians. I heard Philip saying about somebody who will be coming here next week. But as you also know, for every rule, there are exceptions. And I think the cliche should read, never judge a book by its cover unless you are its author. And I hold the premise that as an author, one has the rare liberty of judging the book by the cover. Does that sound okay with everybody? Yes? You like that? And that's why tonight I've taken the liberty of entitling my talk as Judging the Weatherproof Salesman by its cover. And that is why I printed that small cover for you. So have a look at it, because I'll ask you something there. The other thing we all know is this, that as human beings, it does not matter how many times our mother reminds us that we should not judge things by first impressions, because we are always prone to judge things from these first impressions. In fact, social research informs us that we make our judgments during the first 3 seconds of our meeting new people. And thereafter, we spend the rest of the time confirming or validating our initial perceptions of what we saw. Isn't that what we do even in social relationships? You might remember when you first met your spouse, or a young man meets a young woman, and the first thing is, wow. So those are the first 3 seconds of forming the impression. So tonight, in my first part of the presentation, I would like to invite you to do something different and special for me. I would like you to wear the author's cap. So you wear the author's hat for tonight and judge the Weatherproof Salesman by its cover. I'm happy for you to tell me on first impression, looking at that cover, what you think is contained in that book. Your interpretation of The Weatherproof Salesman, the message contained therein. And I'm happy to hear as many comments as possible before I give you my own, because I also give you my own. Anybody with a comment? If you are confronted with that cover, what would you think contained in that book? Without thinking too hard about it.
What's the idea of the chicken?
Well, I think that it's bad weather, whatever it is, but it's got a dollar sign there, it's got a medical kit there, so that there must be some connection between money and getting hurt, or maybe somebody trying to band-aid perhaps deeds or whatever.
Some dollars, some rain there, some medical connections, yeah?
Just, and it also looks like it could be humorous.
Humorous, yeah, that's a good one.
Does the chicken imply cowardice?
That's a good one. Does the chicken imply cowardice? Yes, no, there's no judgment, Philip?
The umbrella with the dollar on top, is that supposed to mean that money protects you from rainy days? Or?
Does money protect anybody from the rainy days? Or
you can use the money to buy the umbrella.
Or you can use the money to buy the umbrella. That's a good one. Well, any more comments from the gentleman that came with me first? Since you had the most time to look at it.
The lightning doubles as a sales graph.
Oh, double salesman. Yeah, the graph. Yeah, thank you. No comment? Well, thank you very much for your very enlightening comments. Now, allow me to tell you my version of the cover story. Since I work in the pharmaceutical industry, as one of the lady here has noted, my original intended title of the book was very interesting: I Sell Drugs Legally. But you know, the good drugs, not the bad ones, the medicines. But before I finished the book, I decided to carry out a market survey to determine an appropriate title for the book. And I had one question with 5 choices to choose from, asking the general reader what their preferred title would be. And to my surprise, The Weatherproof Salesman won overwhelmingly by 74%, ranking it as the first choice. Very interesting. I hope, therefore, that most of you belong to that 74% of the population. Secondly, let me say something about the image. Philip asked about the cock. So I'll say specifically about the cock. Last night, I briefly watched a movie of a cock fight in Bolivia with people putting their dollar bets for the winning cock. I don't know whether any of you saw that movie. It was, I think, on SBS last night. I just briefly had a look at it. But it was very interesting because I hadn't even written what I was going to say. My friends also tell me that there are ceremonial cockfights in parts of Asia. I don't know whether that is true. Does anybody know whether that is true? It is? Yes? Yeah. In Kenya, where I was born, there is a village in the western part of the country where annual cockfights take place. And the winner of the winning cock actually do get some good money. Probably that tells us about the dollar sign on top of the umbrella. But no, now, we also know that the cock isn't the strongest creature in the animal kingdom. In fact, as a Kenyan, I probably would have chosen the lion being the strong animal, Simba. But I chose the cock. And the reason was for its resilience. I think Philip already observed that. Though comparatively weak, a cock will stand its ground and fight for its turf from any predators, sometimes to its death. It will also ferociously fight both on the ground and even in mid-air, all at the same time. And looking at the title that I've given you there, how about the eyesight? A cock will spot aerial dangers from hawks as well as land predators and quickly warn its brood to hide away. You've seen how the birds will always look up side by side to see what is approaching and then warn the others. This creature has many qualities, but probably the most prized of them all, and I hope in this case we are not thinking about KFC. The most prized of these qualities to me is the timekeeping ability. For those of us who are lucky to be brought up in rural villages, I'm not saying those who are brought up in cities who are not lucky, we know that a cock will crow at night. And the first crow is around 1 a.m., the second crow happens about 3 a.m., and the third crow happens about 4 a.m. Yes. You know, long before the alarm clocks were invented, we knew what time to get up in Africa simply by listening to the cock crow. Does anyone have similar experience from the countryside? Anybody had the cock crows? Yeah? They do actually crow in some certain times. Yes. Anyway, if you haven't had a cock crow, probably you've read about the cock crow in the Bible. For those who read the Bible. To me, the cock embodies 3 vital characteristics: focus, timeliness, and fortitude. Arguably the greatest key qualities for success in any field. The second image that I wish to draw your attention to is the weather, and some people already mentioned the weather. Of course, you can see the rain. That's why our friend the cock has covered himself with an umbrella. But we also notice he's striding undeterred by the rain and the wind. The weather in the book denotes not just the physical elements of the rain, sunshine, or the wind, but as well, and more so, the moods of the people you encounter daily in your work and social life. For example, we know that a happy environment will make one happy, and vice versa. If you go to a gloomy environment, of course, your mood will go down. The weatherproof message takes on the view that since we cannot control the elements, nor the moods of the people that we meet, then it makes sense to weatherproof our reactions against those external factors so that we can remain focused, vigilant, and effective, like our friend the cock. That, in brief, is my first impression of the cover as the author. Of course, there are many other images, as you've rightly pointed out, the graph, and I'll leave you to do the interpretations once you read the book, and thereby you can verify whether your impressions are correct after seeing what the details in the book are. The second part of my presentation, as I outlined at the beginning, is what prompted me to write the book. However, rather than stand here and give you a litany of the reasons why I wrote this book, and there are many, I don't think that would be of great relevance to you. So I've given this a twist. What I've chosen to focus on is my experiences as a migrant. And as you know, Australia is a country of migrants. And as you would also rightly agree, our cultural and professional experiences, knowingly or unknowingly, shape our view of the world that we live around. As a first-time author, I'm also acutely aware that our experiences echo our writings and our works of art. So yes, the weatherproof salesman is heavily informed by my past experiences, but here today, allow me to discuss only my migration experience. As I've already said, I'm Kenyan, but that's not all, because I'm also proudly Australian. I became a citizen on July 26th of 2006, 2 years after I arrived here on the 5th of May 2004, with my wife, as Philip said, and 2 children as permanent residents under the skilled migration visa. But my migration story did not start in 2004. In fact, it started way back in 1995, when I left Kenya and headed to South Africa in search of greener pastures. I left behind a newly married wife who was 7 months pregnant with our firstborn. And needless to say, when the time came for the baby to be born, I was 6,000 kilometers away in South Africa. I was not there, of course, to see the baby born, and I could only be there in spirit. And well, not the best way to start fatherhood for those who are yet to become fathers. However, later in March of 1996, my son Meleki, who was by then 3 months old, and my wife Maria joined me in South Africa. So that was a good reunion. Now, as you might wonder, how did I decide that the pastures in Kenya were no longer green for me? Because we are always going out to look for greener pastures. So how did this decision come to me? Look, that's a long story, probably another book of its own, but suffice it to say this. I came to that conclusion after I worked there in Kenya for 6 years and was on a high-grade civil service salary scheme as a research officer, and realizing that all I could afford with my salary was to live hand to mouth, buy some food, pay the bus ticket to and from work, and the little savings that were left would go to help the school fees for my nephews and nieces. The other issue was rampant nepotism and tribalism. One couldn't possibly climb the ladder if you did not have a godfather. I'm not saying this is unique to Africa, it's unique to many parts of the world. So, after a while, I came to a cheating conclusion, and I recall the poem Desiderata. I don't know how many of you have read that poem. And I argued to myself that as a child of the universe, it was more honorable thing for me to get out there and try my luck, die whether rich or poor, hence the dollar sign, while fighting the vicious cycle of poverty, rather than dying at home as a poor wretch with an accomplished, lofty dreams and great ideas. And my young wife was in agreement, so we left. And in one word, I became an economic refugee. But even after this very concrete conviction of leaving my country, nothing can fully prepare anyone for the shocks of starting another life outside their known home surroundings. But I also knew something else, that having stepped outside my home country, outside my comfort zone, I was a changed man. My mental, cultural, and social blinkers were fully open, and I was ready to call home whenever or wherever my heart was. In South Africa, we lived there for a good 8 years. In one sentence, I can say that the beautiful land of South Africa, called Tanzania, was a bed of roses. I think somebody had selectively picked the roses, leaving only a few with thorns and dry leaves. But one of my most memorable roses was actually my wife, Werimo, who was born in Johannesburg in 1997. This time around, I was there. And it was a big blessing. I could now play with 2 children instead of 1, and I had made up for when I could not be there in the firstborn. Of the myriad problems that we had in South Africa, 2 of these problems stick out. One was the inconsistency of work permit regulations. I don't know whether any of you has any experience with working under work permits in any country. Nope. There, it did not matter that my company had given me a permanent position, but the migration officials' attitude was to deport all African foreigners. So after 8 years, it invariably necessitated hiring legal services and migration consultants, costing my wife and myself untold anxiety, immense stress, sleepless nights, because they always wanted to get you home, and of course lots of money, which you didn't have. We only had God to rely on, but I'm happy to say that He delivered. The second problem, I would call it, I'm not sure whether you've ever heard of this, I would call it reverse apartheid. I'm sure you've heard about apartheid, but I'm calling it here reverse apartheid. This is the case where dark-skinned South Africans, like me, purportedly or discriminated against other foreign Africans, but favored white immigrants. The color thing in South Africa was simply too deeply rooted in their psyche. It was too deeply embedded in their cultural fabric. But in the end, after many years of wrangling with the immigration department, wanting to deport us, meetings with the central hearing committees, writing numerous appeals and motivation letters to the immigration department, and even to the minister himself, South Africa finally granted us a permanent resident visa. But that was not all. In the same week, I would call this a miracle, Australia granted us a permanent residence visa and a skilled migration. And right away, we made a choice, which was very easy. Go to Australia. Because for those 14 years, my African patriotism had been tested and proven, and it was time to move on and find another place I could call home. We arrived in Sydney on the 5th of April 2004, and in the next few months, we went through what the experts call a J-curve learning period. We had to learn all sorts of other things to ease our settling down. I have to say that we found the financial help from Centrelink very handy. We had some savings, but any financial help was very welcome because the weekly rent was quickly gobbling our savings. They couldn't stand. But very soon we discovered that the issues of settling down in Australia mirrored those in South Africa, although from a different angle, but some similarities. My wife and I had to look for jobs, and getting a job was not easy, and not because we were not qualified. I started my first job as a car washer at the airport, and I did this for one day. But the manager never paid me. There's an interesting bit. He actually conned me. He promised me that he would get back to me the following day, but never heard from him again. So what did I do? I moved to another car wash, to actually Crystal Car Wash, and carried on washing cars. Meanwhile, I wrote hundreds of job applications, close to 400 from 2004 to 2006. I was also lucky. I did dozens of interviews, but mostly got told I had failed or I was overqualified. I remember a case where we had to, on numerous times, change my curriculum vitae because it had all the qualifications. And at one point, my wife told me, you know, sweetie, you know why they're not giving you a job? I said, I don't know. She said, yeah, with this MBA, with these Masters of Business Administration, nobody's going to give you a job. So we deleted that and left the degree, or Bachelor's in Science in Agriculture, and a diploma in management. Still another couple of rounds of application, still no job interview, and then we deleted the degree and left the diploma. So we went on and on until certificates, but it was still not working. Then I got tired of washing cars, and I moved into telemarketing, and then I tried my own courier business, and finally, luckily got my first sales job in the FMCG. But to cut the whole story short, let me say this. The key thing that really got me a sales job in the first place was volunteering as a way of getting the local experience. Using my earlier training, I volunteered in a small IT company and developed their marketing and sales strategies for free, so that in turn, I could use that company as a reference. This is the local experience that the Aussie employer was looking for. So to any of the new migrants that are looking for a job, I always have a recipe for them, and I say, don't wait for the employers to call you, volunteer somewhere. The parallel similarities between settling in South Africa and in Australia and how we were adapting is what prompted me to put down my experiences in this book. It became clear to me why many migrants don't cope or mostly settle for what is less than they are capable of, while others simply repack their bags altogether and go home. If you talk to many migrants, they'll tell you there's that critical period when they think, I should be getting my bags and going back home. It also struck me that the local people, even when they are good meaning, like all Australians are, may not fully understand how to help the migrants. So the first motive of writing The Weatherproof Salesman was to help both the migrant and the local people to look at each other from a different angle and understand one another. In summary, you might think of the book as coming from many different angles. The first angle, as a migrant, highlighting the issues and difficulties surrounding settling down, job searching, failing interview, in quotes, seen as lacking local experience or sometimes being bypassed as overqualified. Before we came here in 2003, I remember reading an article in the newspaper about how MBA graduates were packing shelves in supermarkets in Australia. And that was a shocker for me. I was thinking, this is where we want to go. Are we making the right step now? But anyway, we were done with Africa. The third angle, as a job seeker, how does one hunt for the job that they want? How does one prepare and conduct themselves in an interview? The fourth angle, as an employee, providing a view from bottom up, not from top down. Many of the books will be written from top down, but mine is from bottom up. How does one keep up with the Joneses in this ever-changing environment? And of course, my favorite angle is the salesman's angle. If anybody fancies becoming a salesman, then they would need to know how to manage themselves, manage their customers, as well as how to ask for business. And finally, there is a pragmatic or motivational angle in the book that says, look, if the day or the month or the quarter didn't go as you planned, and the cookie crumbles, as it often does, the answer lies in the courage to dust one's off and keep on marching, just like our friend the cock. As a reader, one can pick any angle from the book and run with it, and the reader becomes the main character in the book. This book does not sell Hollywood success, because I'm not a Hollywood star. Too often in Hollywood stardom, you only get to read the success stories, but rarely do they tell you how many times they failed. This book is really more about the potholes I passed through during my short journey, the lessons that I've learned, how I've coped, and in retrospect, how one can avoid similar potholes to excel. So, why would you read The Weatherproof Salesman? In one sentence, The Weatherproof Salesman is a story of resilience, determination, dignity, humor, and patience. Those who have read the book describe it as a straightforward, a diverse read, extremely interesting and informative, hilarious, a must read for anybody with a passion for sales and zeal for life. Thank you.